settings, worlds, and magic. And today's episode is Half-elves, Half-Orcs, Half-Coolshit, and Half-Bullshit. So, what do I mean by that last part, Half-Bullshit? Well, it's a thing of just races, half races usually share the traits of both, and usually it is seen as positive, but sometimes it could be overly positive, and it has no negative side effects, only like role-playing side effects that are like only vastly affected, which I don't particularly like as much. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, let's take the typical half-elf. Now, the half-elf looks like a human and isn't as like alien to us as the elf is, because of how like humanish it looks. The only thing that you would actually notice is the sharp point in the ears, but it isn't as like knife ears as like say like a blood elf from like World of Warcraft. Yeah, so the thing about that is that the only effects that happen to a half elf is that, well, they get both traits. They get the magic and they get the racial part of humans, which is getting like a pluses wherever you want them to be, which makes them kind of less unique in that it's when you really look at them as something as a role playing race, they seem more like special human. Like you could put Link as a half elf, like, and you know Link's a special person, but like there isn't really much difference. They do live slightly longer than humans, but that isn't like a role playing experience. They're essentially more special humans that isn't really an entirely new race. And it's kind of like why I don't especially like half-elves, because they aren't, as a race, they aren't negatively impacted as much. And whenever they try, whenever I do see any, the only thing that like a character that objectively makes me like connected to them on an emotional level as a character is just the character themselves, not their race, but the character. The race does help, however, and something like I feel like the more you connect to being human as a different race, the more it's unique. Not special, just unique. But that isn't the same thing for other stuff. For example, half-orcs. Half-orcs are adversely like non-orcs in that they are much more intelligent usually, which is represented in the race, in the races where orcs have a -2 to intelligence, while half-orcs get I think a +2 strength and a +1 to anywhere. I'm not sure about half-orc, but basically they share that trait with humans. And the thing is about half-orcs that they're much more like easier to like take damage than an orc. However, them going to society is like no one likes them, and it makes them quite special in that respect. and you might try to say the same thing about half-elves, but half-elves, like, it's not like everybody hates an elf, and that's probably, unless you're being a dickish elf, then yeah, you're really good, earning up to your, your reputation. But, like, things like that. There's a half dragon. Now, half dragons are different from dragonborn, in which case, the half dragon, it shares much more directly to their dragon a part of themselves, rather than the dragonborn, which like let's say a dragonborn was red, a red dragonborn. They could still be like a good person and stuff like that, but a half red dragon, well, it's likely that they're going to very likely that they're going to adopt their parents' attitudes and stuff. Well, specifically the dragon part, which is much more powerful and much more overtaking than the human part usually, and that what it is seen because of how powerful dragons are in D&D is that usually the dragon part wins over most of the time, and that they usually look like a way more powerful looking dragonborn looking anyway, but things like that. And another well, there are also tieflings, and tieflings are special in that they have the same properties as half-orc, which them being their devilkin likeness. Sometimes it's the family that they're part of, which has this horrible bloodline thing going on because of some dickhead ancestor, or it was just that a devil fucked them over and made them a tiefling. It's things like that, and you have multiple origins. Sometimes it's like a race of humans that made deals with the devil so that they could have more powerful, but instead they are now scorned by society and stuff like that. Interesting stuff, that kind of thing. Now, fun concepts that I've been thinking of for this is specifically this goes with normal genetics, and that if you took let's say a horse and you breeded it with a mule, what you would get, if you breed a horse with a donkey, you would get a mule. Now, a mule is special in that it has both the most main attributes of those people, of those two characteristics, and so they can run as fast as a horse, but they can still carry a lot, which is a very good combination. However, there's one thing, and the one thing is that they can't reproduce at all, and that's because their DNA is so mixed up to the point where they can't actually make any children. So, for any fantasy world, you could potentially have this weird underlying rule, and it would potentially make these half races very not scarce, but not and this would not looked very looked down upon, instead of just being passed off like half-elves and stuff like that. Now, a funny thing about this is that this would only really apply to the half-elves, because half-orcs have a special thing due to their curse from Grumsh, is that any who reproduce with them will always be a half-orc, because Grumsh wants that orc army real bad. And a good way to do that is just through doing raids and you get the rest of the idea. But with half-elves, that particular theory would work out. Tieflings, because of their strong, this would go with half-dragons, tieflings, and with the race that has never been made into a PC race, but I felt it should have been, officially, Mongol folk. Now, Mongol folk is a special race that they're basically this mishmash of like animals, but they used to be human, or maybe they had some part human in them. This could be that you were born with it, well, not born with it like in a good way, born with it in like you were mutated horribly. Like you might have a snout of a dog, or and chicken legs, or you can have you get the idea. You're basically misshapen so much to the point of like your parents basically abandoning you, just on the fact that you are this horribly messed up. Yeah, things like that. It's kind of like why I like messed up creatures in that sense, because I like I like the idea of creatures that are having a hard time living because of these unfair conditions that are placed upon themselves because of how they were born. Kobolds, anything like that. I just absolutely love seeing that kind of stuff, and seeing the roleplay opportunities that they present, rather than just being a more special human, basically. Which is kind of like why I hate elves and half-elves. They're just a more special human with more magical abilities, and it doesn't really, I don't see the disconnect really. The only time I could think of like a disconnect if it's like the fairyland, and then I could see the disconnect, because then it's like, oh wow, these people are crazy. But usually you don't see like a full disconnect from like the human, and I always found that that's a problem with elves and half-elves. So yeah, that will be the end of this episode. If any suggestions are out, please place it in the comments, because I would love to talk about this kind of stuff. It's always very interesting to me. Even though fantasy never really delved into the idea, make Spellslinger campaign, please, D&D. I would be interested in that. Just don't make it a horrible map. They've been making a lot of horrible maps, and it's kind of bothering me. Except for like Strahd's a good one. Strahd's a good one. Yeah, that'll be the end of this episode.